I'm also getting married on September 10th, starting 1 p.m. Oh wait, that's the same day as your wedding, sis! My younger sister teased, her eyes narrowed in a mocking grin. Same day, even the same time. It couldn't possibly be a coincidence. Aren't you just having a small family-only ceremony, sis? You don't even have 100 people coming? Aw, that's so pitiful. We're inviting everyone, not just family, but friends and coworkers too. For a grand celebration. Do whatever you want. I swallowed the retort and instead chose different words. My name is Sarah. I'm 30 years old, a full-time worker. I met Thomas, who is 3 years older, through a friend's introduction, and we registered our marriage just recently, after 2 years of dating. Thomas works in the food industry and is a sincere and kind-hearted man. We plan to have our wedding ceremony next month, with most of the preparations already done. While many of our friends chose to hold lavish ceremonies, we decided on a small, family-only affair. The reason? I didn't want my parents and sister mingling with my friends and colleagues. Ever since we were friends, my parents had always favored my sister Melanie over me. Melanie, 3 years younger and undeniably prettier even from my objective perspective, was the apple of their eyes. With her large eyes, long eyelashes, small face, and fair skin, she was scouted by several talent agencies and even worked as a teen model during her school days. My parents doted on Melanie, often comparing her to me. Sarah, you have such a plain face. It's depressing looking at you. Sarah, you lack any charm. Melanie is as cute as an angel, unlike you. Was a common refrain. They would buy new clothes and toys for Melanie, providing her for every whim. But I was not allowed to learn any hobbies. Melanie was indulged with piano, ballet, swimming lessons, and more, but she was fickle and quickly lost interest. Despite this, our parents never admonished her. Even when Melanie failed tests due to her carefree lifestyle, they cheered her on, while scolding me harshly if I scored just average. I would often think to myself, I wish you hadn't given birth to me either. Every time they said I should have never been born. I was not allowed to retort as my parents badmouthed me and pampered Melanie. Naturally, Melanie grew up spoiled and acting like a queen. She remained beautiful, but her character was horrible. We don't look alike at all, sis. Your plain face is so pathetic. She'd mock, constantly belittling me. I didn't want to introduce my parents and sister to Thomas or his family. But my in-laws were aware of the complex relationship and didn't insist. However, my parents demanded a meeting, and reluctantly we arranged for a joint family dinner. The day arrived amid my anxiety. My family, my parents and Melanie, and Thomas's parents attended the dinner. Worried about any blunder my family might commit, I could barely taste the delicious food. Despite the gathering being for my wedding, my parents showed no interest in Thomas. Even when we talked about how we met or our future life, they dismissed it with a mere, In contrast, they praised Melanie excessively when introducing her. Even when my in-laws tried to shift the conversation to me, my parents would deflect, saying, "Forget about her, let's talk about Melanie." Melanie chimed in, saying, "Mom, Dad, you two praising me too much." Well, there's nothing interesting to talk about, sis, anyway. As expected, but still distressing to see, my bizarre family dynamic played out in front of Thomas and my in-laws, causing their faces to stiffen. My family, having had their fill of food and talk of Melanie, left without even a congratulatory word for our wedding. I was stunned that they hadn't even congratulated me on my wedding, when Thomas gently put his arm around me. I heard some of it, but I never thought they would be this terrible. You've had it tough, Sarah. My in-laws then expressed their heartfelt gratitude. Sarah, we know you've been through a lot. We're so happy that you're a part of our family now. Please feel free to lean on us like real parents from now on. Their words warmed my heart. I thanked them and finally voiced something that had been on my mind for a while. I'm thinking about having a small, intimate wedding because my parents and sister are, well, as you've seen, unpredictable. I'm a bit concerned about what might happen if we invite acquaintances or friends. Would it be okay if we keep it just to close family? I asked my in-laws. Thomas had already agreed to this. My in-laws responded affirmatively. Of course. I let out a sigh of relief. Though it was decided that we would have a small family-only wedding. However, as our wedding approached, I was hit with a shocking report. Unexpectedly, I received a call from my parents. Melanie is getting married. Her fiancé is at our house right now. You must come over. On arrival, I saw my parents, Melanie, and her fiancé. The man's face was familiar. Nice to see you, Sarah. I was surprised to find out you are Melanie's sister, he said. I'm surprised too, I replied. His name was Ethan Matthews. He worked for one of my company's business partners. When Melanie mentioned your name, I assumed you must be a different Sarah. I never thought you two could be sisters. You don't look alike at all, he sneered. This man had always looked down on me at work. Apparently, it was because I didn't have a college degree. My parents told me, you should work, not go to college. Unable to attend college, I joined the current company right after high school. Matthews, it seems, graduated from a prestigious university, and he tends to judge people based on their education. The idea of becoming family with such a man was daunting. I wanted to leave the room as quickly as possible. Congratulations on your wedding. I'll be taking my leave now, I said. But then Melanie stunned me with an unexpected statement. We've decided to have our wedding on the same day, at the same venue as you guys, she blurted out. Ethan joined in. Our wedding is going to be grand compared to yours, he said, smirking. I was too shocked to respond to their outrageous proposal. Our wedding venue was a large place capable of hosting several weddings on the same day. Despite my initial preference for a smaller venue due to the intimate guest list, Thomas and my in-laws insisted on this grand venue, since it was our big day. Indeed, if Melanie and Ethan were planning a grand ceremony with lots of guests, this would be the ideal venue. However, deliberately scheduling their wedding at the same time and day could only be seen as an act of spite. Melanie and Ethan laughed derisively. Look at her! She's frozen in shock! Are you okay? They mocked. I tried to remain calm and retorted. What do you mean by that? What about our parents and relatives? Which wedding are they supposed to attend? Melanie was unfazed. Don't worry. Dad, Mom, and all our relatives are attending mine and Ethan's wedding, she replied, looking triumphant. Our parents even started calling our relatives right then and there, requesting them to attend Melanie's ceremony. The relatives, whom I had met several times, always favored Melanie. They either didn't want to stir up trouble, or perhaps they thought I was a liar. Even when I explained that it was Melanie who had announced her wedding date after ours, they didn't believe me and labeled me as immature for trying to have the ceremony on the same day as my sisters. Looking at my smiling parents, Melanie, and Ethan, I let out a sigh and left the house, saying, ugh, okay, then fine. No one even came to see me out. I could hear their vulgar laughter echoing as I closed the door. Back home, I apologized to Thomas and my in-laws about not being able to invite anyone from my side to our intimate wedding, despite being the one to suggest it in the first place. However, they didn't mind and even suggested that with fewer guests, we could have a more lavish ceremony. I was truly grateful. Then came the wedding day. As the relatives were walking through the lobby to attend Melanie's reception, I crossed paths with them. Sarah is such a nasty woman. Compared to Melanie, Sarah is so plain, they whispered and passed by. I brushed off their comments and determined to make the day the best wedding ever. Our ceremony was going great. Thomas's talented relatives entertained us with various performances, creating a truly happy atmosphere. Suddenly, amidst the celebration, we heard a voice shouting, "What is this?" Melanie, Ethan, my parents, and Ethan's parents all stormed into our wedding. Melanie, what's going on? I asked her out of the blue. She burst out, "Everyone from Ethan's office is absent today. You must have done something." In reality, the reception hall for Melanie and Ethan's wedding was devoid of attendees from Ethan's workplace, leaving many empty seats. This caused my parents to angrily confront Ethan's parents with, "What a disgrace this is." Ethan's parents were furious, having been berated for something they knew nothing about, which set a bad mood. Melanie, in a panic, falsely told Ethan's parents that she and I had arranged our weddings to overlap on purpose, as we were not on good terms. Thus, she stormed into my wedding ceremony, suspecting I must have done something. My wedding was a disaster, and yet Sarah's wedding is full of happiness. It's infuriating, Melanie spat out. Melanie, calm down. I tried to reason with her. However, Melanie attempted to ruin the ceremony by shouting, "Attention, everyone! My sister Sarah is the worst person in the world. She has bullied me since I was a child." I tried to stop her. "Melanie, stop this!" But her tirade didn't halt. "I'm much more beautiful in a wedding dress than she is. She's always been envious of my beauty, and she's just a gloomy, depressing woman." Melanie continued with her baseless accusations. Ethan joined in, agreeing with her. "Exactly! Sarah is a high school graduate and totally useless." He went on. "That's why you shouldn't hire high school graduates. I, on the other hand, graduated from a top-notch university and I'm super talented. I'm even buddies with the CEO, so promotion is a certainty." He still went on telling how he is great. However, when Ethan noticed my father-in-law seated at the groom's family table, his face turned pale. He had been boasting about himself and disparaging me, but now he was shaking in fear. "Why is the CEO here?" he mumbled in shock. "Matthews, I'm disappointed in you," my father-in-law said with anger in his voice. Why is the CEO here?" Ethan asked in a panic, to which my father-in-law replied, "I am the father of the groom, Sarah's father-in-law." Ethan stood there, mouth agape in surprise. Indeed, my father-in-law was the CEO of Ethan's company. "The reception venue for your wedding was next to ours, and before our ceremony started, I ran into your guests. I heard everything, how you intentionally overlapped our son's wedding, date, and time to it." The CEO voiced his anger. Ethan's invited guests had been terrified by the CEO's fury upon learning the truth, so they had fled. "No, it's not what you think, sir. I had no idea. It was all Melanie's doing." Ethan desperately tried to explain. Melanie, however, looked at him in disbelief. "There's no way I would ruin Sarah's wedding. She's an important client's employee. What I said earlier was just a joke. I didn't mean it." Ethan continued with his flimsy defense, only to be cut off by my father-in-law's command. "Stop lying! I spoke with your colleague earlier. I heard about the derogatory remarks you've been making about Sarah," he informed Ethan, who searched for an excuse, but seeming to realize he was caught, hung his head. "Sarah is an exceptional woman. She couldn't go to college due to her family's circumstances, but started working right after high school and has been striving every day since. She's been living a straight and honest life, despite her tough home situation. She would never judge or belittle someone based on their education, like you do. She's a very kind and wise woman." My father-in-law praised me, making me tear up. Sir, I deeply apologize for..." Ethan started to say, only for my father-in-law to cut him off. "You're apologizing to the wrong person. Apologize to Sarah, and don't you dare interfere with my son and his wife again. Understood?" Yes, sir." Ethan was shaking like a leaf. Turning to me, he tearfully apologized. I'm really sorry." "As I've had enough, please, just leave," I said. Melanie erupted. "What is this turn of events? Why is this happening?" Ethan yelled at Melanie. "Shut up! I regret ever marrying you." "What did you just say?" Melanie turned red with anger. The two were squabbling and having a huge fight when shortly the venue staff came over and ushered Ethan and Melanie out. Their parents and in-laws, who had been watching in disbelief, also quickly left the venue. We, who were left behind, blew away the stunned atmosphere and resumed the joyous reception, which turned out to be quite a blast. I thanked my father-in-law, saying, "Father, I was truly happy about what you said earlier. Thank you." My father-in-law smiled warmly and said, "I apologize for my subordinate's behavior, and again, Thank you, Sarah, for marrying my son. Please, let me know if you're ever in trouble. Later, Ethan was apparently nervous about being disciplined for this incident, but since it wasn't a work-related incident, there were no demotions. However, Ethan, who had been acting submissive in front of my father-in-law because he wanted to advance his career, ruined everything when his true nature was exposed. He was no longer able to speak to my father-in-law about anything other than work, and he was demoted to being just another employee. Ethan, who had been pressuring his colleagues by bragging about being the boss's favorite, was isolated due to his true nature, and even his coworkers and subordinates avoided eye contact with him. At the end of the day, Ethan was probably just another employee for my father-in-law, considering that he didn't even know who his son was going to marry. The entire company learned about Ethan's misdeeds, and Ethan's comfort in the office diminished. He even started blaming Melanie for everything and became violent towards her. Ethan was sued by Melanie for domestic violence, and Melanie was sued by Ethan's parents for ruining the wedding. It was a messy divorce drama. Melanie, who was crying about Ethan being violent, and her parents sued Ethan. Ethan and his parents, on the other hand, claimed that Melanie and her parents had interfered with Ethan's work and ruined the wedding. Both parties are reportedly hiring lawyers and preparing to sue, but they are struggling because they each only want to hear what they want to hear and are ignoring any inconvenient truths. As the mudslinging continued, Melanie ran out of money due to wedding expenses and lawyer fees, and her life became difficult. After the divorce was finalized, she had to move back in with her parents, who had treated her like a princess until then, but now treated her terribly, calling her the shame of their family. Although I didn't want to know, Melanie frequently called or emailed me to explain how tough her situation was. Even if I completely ignored her, I was still accumulating hundreds of missed calls and unread emails. My sister's abusive calls and her begging emails for money were all blocked without response. And then I started getting calls and emails from my parents. They were all begging for money, and they weren't worth reading. Whether they had spent too much money trying to show off at my sister's wedding, or they thought I would agree with them if they asked nicely, I don't know. But the volume was increasing, and it was becoming a nuisance, so I blocked them as well. I was prepared for them to come to my house, but they didn't even have the money for transportation to come here. Ethan's parents, who should be practically strangers to me, for some reason were begging me to mediate with my father-in-law. Recently, they even tried to follow me home, so I reported them without hesitation. They ran away every time the police came, but they have been increasing their stakeouts recently. Thanks to the increased number of reports, the police have strengthened their patrols, so things have been peaceful for now. I am building a warm home with my kind mother-in-law and father-in-law, thinking that they are my real parents, not my biological ones. I feel the calmness of a real family, which I had only heard of in rumors. There's no such thing as daughter-in-law bullying here, and I'm feeling the reality that family can be such a warm thing.